Chapter 9, 9.2 Sergey. I saw him when I came along to the school in second grade. The short blond boy didn't stand apart from the others. I remember I was amused to hear his high-pitched voice. I also remember when we had a shuffle over something, I quickly peed and lost interest in him. What a wimp he was. We had become friends in the fourth grade when he started going to an after-school group. With his specific sense of humor, he was constantly amusing us all, and it was then when he began to show some literary talent, and our teacher would read his works to the class. He also turned out to be a hell of a fighter, something that would come in handy to us. People's behaviors are well modeled in classes. There always will be leaders and outsiders in any classroom, and groups are often at war with each other. Such a group was created by me and Sergey, which then subjugated the whole class. I remember Stepan. He was both the toughest and fittest in the class when I came along. So it was thought. He was feared. My relation with him varied from friendship to fierce fighting. He was a tough guy, all right. But once I saw him crying in front of his mother when she was summoned by the teacher to school, and she was looking at him with hatred as the teacher had a hard going on him, and I saw him getting soft, and I realized that he was a doormat man. And I started putting him down. In the fifth grade, he was still regarded as the most influential in the class when I dethroned him. And in the sixth grade, I made him an outcast. No one would even talk to him. I was seeing to it. And I cruelly punished those who violated the boycott. The older friends of his would even come to take up the cudgels for him and teach me some lessons. They picked on the wrong guy and had no choice but to leave me alone. Anyway, the boycott I had put against him turned out to be so pervasive and effective to put him down, and Stepan was down and low, and I decided to ease off the grip on him. I started saying hello to him, and he gratefully responded. I would invite him to join us in playing football and some other activities with us as well. So I understand that I had the authority to manipulate the class. I still wonder, how the hell could I do that? With Sergey, it was a true peer friendship. I was bigger than him, therefore stronger, so I never had the desire to check it out. And we had never fought. We both were a headache for our teachers. I suspect, though, that our class teacher secretly liked us. Take me alone. After fixing my class, I kept fighting, and because we were fighting with A class, often an alliance with scumbags from C class, so I always had enough to keep myself busy. Feuding with the A class would go quiet and flare up again. I think I was in sixth grade. My sister and I were in a hurry for my class. We were running late. Down the crowded hallway, I got ahead of Simeon from A grade. I must have accidentally hit him. He snapped to me and didn't let me pass him. The word by word we got into each other, and he was one of his class leaders, by the way. I remember that from the extended care we both went. Just a second later, we clashed like pit bull dogs. My sister was terrified by Simeon's swearing. I must have been rabid. Simeon obviously couldn't cope with me, and the same sturdy Aleni rushed to his aid, and I hear the girls in the hall crying outraged that it was so unfair. Hey, he's alone. There are too many of you. I'm on an adrenaline rush. Simeon is already down, being dragged away. I knocked Aleni down too, and the third one comes out to replace him. I don't remember his name, but they also say that he was fighting like hell. I don't know what came over me, but they dragged out the third one too, with blood all over him. And the fourth one, Big Kaluzhny, has never made his mind to attack me. And I even had time for a lesson before the call with not very much deranged hair and without abrasions on my face. But after this incident, the enmity between our classes broke out with renewed vigor. And I was famous again. He has beaten up Simeon himself. He has beaten Simeon. Oh, come on. There were guys stronger than Simeon there. That's the kind of street hardening I had before our family has moved to town. To become even tougher, in the 6th grade, we enrolled in Greco-Roman wrestling school in a nearby town and were very happy and proud about that. And in PE class, we would do some sparring show or some couple of tricks with him in front of our class so they could see how good we were. However, after a little while, we were expelled from that school in disgrace. In Soviet time, you didn't have to pay for any training in children's and youth sports school, but you had to be doing good at school to qualify for that. Well, to begin with, we didn't like it when Nikolai Fyodorovich, we called him Nick Fed for short, announced to bring our diaries for the next training. But we reassured ourselves that maybe not all the boys that went to this wrestling school were daredevils like us here in town, but no way they were nerds of some sort either. After the next training, Nick Fed was checking our diaries. One had too many C's, equals to 3 in Russian USSR 5-point grading scale. Nick Fed severely lectured him and gave him a stern warning. If things are not getting better next time with him, he would consider saying goodbye to him. We looked at each other and tensed. The one who had an F was in serious trouble. He had his last warning. The turn came to us. Well, he has counted 28 Fs on mine and 36 on Sergei's. The whole group counted and recounted them. They fucking couldn't believe it. Then Nick Fed had the group lined up. There were 2 stacks of diaries in front of the coach. One big and just our 2 diaries on the other. And the coach, in front of everybody, loudly declared that we were out and none of us would ever cross the shelter of this school. The next year I signed up to his different group again. I was doing much better in my next school in town. Sergei has never dared to show up his face in front of him again. A lot of those F marks were given to us unjustly. At least the good half of them were put in by freaked-out Zinka, the math teacher. Well, she is worth dwelling on. She is now the mayor of one of the largest cities in Russia. She is an intelligent woman and has made her a dizzying career. This is generally true for short people like her. And she had a bad temper. She was teaching us since the 4th grade. She was the C class, the most rampant one, and our allies in our eternal war with the A class homeroom teacher. Ours was the B class, right in between those extreme classes. She was the youngest teacher, short, with a huge blonde braid. Sergei instantly fell in love with her. At her first lesson recess, he kept saying, gasping with delight to me, "She's so beautiful." I wouldn't know. She was a good-looking young woman, all right, but nothing special to me. But she must have been hot for sure. At the beginning of our 6th grade school year, on the 2nd geometry lesson, Zinaida Vasilyevna demanded the first student to tell her the definition of a circle. He didn't know he was supposed to know it by heart. "NF, your diary, please." She got to the next one. Again, "NF, your diary, please." So she collected diaries from half of the class. She was pissed off at something I would never know. No one, as I remember, knew that we were supposed to know the definition. She opened the diaries to put her F marks. Well, it was the beginning of the school year, for crying out loud. They were not even filled up, so she filled all the blank lines with more F marks. So many of us had 5 to 10 of them at a time. I had 15. That was about my whole year's quota. The whole week waited to be filled up in my diary, and Zinka, to save her time, and mine for that matter, drew a fucking ugly fat and huge red F mark on the rest of the blank page. She fucking flew off the handle. Fucking loose cannon. She must have hated me badly. She just fucking killed me. My dad with his sick temper will surely gag me. And sure he did, both him and my mom. My parents would never think that a teacher could be in any way wrong for once. It goes way back to Soviet slave mentality. My father, as you know, never handled me with gloves and whacked me good with his leather belts for every F marks I had. Nick Fat has his pleasure too. I had made his day all right. He showed that big fat red F on my diary page to his lined-up squadron. Nice teachers, huh? Sergey is almost the only person we're still friends up to these days. When I moved to town, we stayed in touch. I missed that rural place and my old school. Well, Vinsady was not as well maintained as the town I now lived in, but everything there was so home to me. A bit violent but simple. Lermontov and Vinsady's young men were always feuding, but I never participated in this. And, as you might have noticed, I love my Vinsady rural school more than the one in Lermontov. I think you understand why. I still communicate with many mates from both schools, and now look at what I see. The current Vinsady classmates' die-off rate is higher than that of Lermontov's. Had I stayed in Vinsady myself, my chances to die would have been higher than that of Lermontov's. And when Vinsady and Lermontov fought each other wall-to-wall by the lake, Vinsady would win most of the time despite the constant Lermontov's outnumbering of people. Once, when Vinsady was quite close to lose and almost collapsed under Lermontov's charge, a cavalry, the Vinsady's Roma on donkey, suddenly came up to help. Perfect timing. They tipped the scale and Vinsady won again. But more often than not, the cops would show up and intervene before it all even started. Informants seemed to be doing their jobs fine. Nevertheless, I once got beaten for being in the wrong place by my Vinsady fellow guys. Before that, I always went to visit my old school before the school holidays, when we had fewer classes, and so I had a little time to visit them while they were still there having their classes. This time I went there before the May Day holidays. I was 15 then, and I was going to Greco-Roman wrestling school for about 2 years. I was doing fairly good in the local wrestling competitions, but I was getting more focused on what is now called fitness workouts and was lovingly building up my muscles. In my new school, there was a girl who tried to grab my biceps with her 2 palms in the gym class, and she couldn't, and she spoke expressively about it, so I had goosebumps on my skin. After that, I, motivated, went to build my muscles up to get them look even bigger. I started looking differently at my ex-class girls and noticed that Lena, for example, had beautiful legs. And look at once tall and awkward Natasha. Wow! And my ex-next-door friend Irina. No matter what they were saying about her. Anyway, I made it to see my old class. And I talked to the guys. And to girls as well. It was especially good to talk to my ex-teachers. Damn, it was good to be in the spotlight. That's what I got beaten up for being in the spotlight. We all got to the street in a recess. It was the end of April. What a lovely sunny day it was. It was almost summertime out there. I took off my jacket. Let them see it. I had my favorite t-shirt on. Stupid. I should have paid a little attention to a group of older school students smoking at the school library corner, so the teachers don't see them, and were looking at me somehow intently. And I wanted more than just standing up and showing off. I went up to a bar, jumped up, and began doing chin-ups and rotating or doing a bit of my showing off. There were a lot of girls standing up out there too. I was so damn good. And that group of smokers moved towards me. That's where I finally got it. I just had it fucking coming. And the biggest separated from the group came up to me. "What's your name?" he asked, lighting yet another cigarette. "Radik." "Hey, did you hear? Radik his name is, haha." He turned to his group. "What fucking kind of name is that?" He was provoking me, and I saw that I was not going to get away that easy. I have lived long enough in Vinsadi to know that. But why? Doesn't anyone remember me anymore? Or was I an alien to them now? "And do you know who am I?" he kept going on me. "Have you ever heard this one name?" "Hell yes, of course I have." "Is that you, Swan?" I must have looked intense, but still decent. "Hey!" He obviously didn't like the fact that I hadn't known him in person. "I saw him before. I just didn't know it was him I was talking to." He was 2 years older and half a head taller than me. I started measuring him up so I would die as hard as I could when the second one came up to me from the crowd and just said, "Let's go." I knew him too. He was a year older and his name was Yura, and I saw I could probably handle him, but I knew I was in trouble big time. My class got silent and stayed put this way all along. They all knew the Swan all right. With me there, his name had not been that known yet. Okay, we all went along behind the school building. On my way with the group, Sergei quietly said to me, "Never fret." But he looked alarmed, frightened even. "If there are people among you who have not seen how people fight, I will explain. When there are boys up to 10 years fighting, they rarely result in bruises and even nose bleeding. No broken teeth either. It all ends up with tears only. It looks more like a cockfight. But starting with 13 to 15 old boys, there is quite a different matter, and injuries are getting more serious. It's more like pit bull dog fights. It may get really nasty sometimes. I don't know. Probably with such moral support this Yura had, he expected to easily beat me. But in the first seconds of the fight, I had his one eye swollen and shut completely, and his second one did not look much better. Things definitely were not going well for him. I told him loud enough for everyone to hear us that he might want to stop it. He was not going to win. He said, "No, go ahead," in front of his cheering supporters. He knew they wouldn't let him lose it and get maimed as well, I suppose. I still hoped to walk away on my own feet, so I did something to win over some of the crowd, which was not very friendly to me. How naive I was. It was the late 70s. It was a karate rampant fashion time, and anyone who kicked with the Kia cry thought he was Talgat fucking Nigmatulin. The Soviet version of Bruce Lee none of us knew yet. The USSR movie star himself. And I was kicking, and in fact it worked great with that Kia cry too. When Swan saw that things were getting really bad to Yura, he stopped the fight, turned him to look at him, and then turned him to the crowd with the words, "Look what he just did to Yura." He handed over him to somebody and bang, landed me the fucking big one. I had the sparks in my eyes and I jumped at him when I had someone else's good sidekick from behind. It would be trouble for me to handle Swan alone. Some later said, though, I would have torn everyone apart, especially on such adrenaline I was, had they fought me straight 1-to-1 each. And what could I have done against the two at once? I wasn't fucking Bruce Lee Almighty after all. I lost my balance. I was lying on the ground and the two heroes kept beating me up. After a while, being conscious all along, I didn't feel pain at all. Then this Yura with his puffy eyes and a broken nose resurfaced from the crowd again, pulled up my head by my hair to see if I had any bruises on my face yet. I had known. And right after that I had a couple more heavy blows with his trendy jackboots in my face. He had to fix it. He would have been hurt, but I still didn't have many bruises even after his kicks. Just deep abrasions left by his jackboots. And I was told that for about a month he wore big bulky sunglasses and some teachers were making fun of him about some younger boy beating him up. However, it may have become the reason for my 2 eye surgeries years later to fix my retinal detachment. The surgeon said that apparently I had a concussion of some sort or some other serious injuries that had caused that inveterate retina damage. Perhaps that was the case. Even after that, I was able to stand up and Dad swore to come again. He turned around to give me yet another good one. There was not much I could do to fight him back. I was a pulp with my leg dislocated. Kolya, my classmate, who even didn't know how to fight, came out and pushed aside the swan and pulled me out of that crowded arena. I never visited that class anymore. Not that I nursed a grudge against them all along. I just felt that it ceased to be my class. I was told that after the incident, the teachers publicly shamed my ex-class boys in front of the girls for failing to help their comrade. Just look, they would say, at those future warriors, the motherland protectors on whom we were supposed to rely on. Sergei took it to his heart, by the way. I didn't hold a grudge against him either, but it was a good lesson for me. Never get fascinated by people and you won't be disappointed. Never get fascinated by anything at all. And I did my best not to. Still, I wish I could learn though how to handle betrayal and perfidy as well. Sergei has redeemed himself. That was the very incident I had lost my other childhood friend, Zhenya. You read it in the chapter above. It was when we were at Zhenya's army recruitment party, and with my bra, we went to say goodbye to Sasha, who was going to the army and had his party as well. There, as it so happened, I triggered a major brawl, a real battle on the entire Vinsady Broad Street. Sergei was good at fighting like a lion for me then. Well, we had all our asses kicked there anyway. There's a lot one could write about Sergei. I wrote about his sense of humor. He also wrote poetry. A little naive in the sense, but very rhythmic and immaculate by the structure. I wrote my music to his Just for a Moment I Wanted and uploaded it to my YouTube. Sure, he had some literature gift along with his innate spelling literacy. I remember how our class teacher would give him a stack of notebooks for him to check, and they sat together checking the other students' homework. I do not remember whether he was entitled to put the grade marks, though. I even don't know how it all would be pedagogically correct, but the teacher had recognized his innate literacy. We had all seen that. By the way, I wasn't much inferior to Sergei in that either. Sergei, despite being a creative and talented boy, still was a street hooligan. Once I don't remember whose idea it was, but I was to get it in the neck from Zinka for this, not Sergei. In recess before the math class, painted the whole blackboard with a chalk, turning it to the whiteboard, and finished right before the recess ended. Then they couldn't wash the board out. Whenever it dried up, it'd go white again. Yet Sergei was very vulnerable and sentimental. Once, when he was waiting for me to go to school, a truck hit a puppy right in front of his eyes. Puppy screamed, and by the time I went out, it died. Sergei kept crying on our way to school. A classmate boy asked him what had happened, and Sergei pounced on him in response and beat him up good. That was Sergei all right. That's how he felt sorry for the puppy. By the way, Sergei had forgotten this incident, and when we were drinking, I reminded him about that. There were a lot of things to travel down the memory line. We liked to remember our after-school girls, Olga, another Olga, and the redhead Vera, our night boatings on the lake. After the army, we would thumb through his diaries. He, unlike me, kept them. We would fall about like crazy on them. The teacher, overwhelmed with her anger, would write down anything to get the parents to do something with their kids. I wish I remembered all those teachers' emotionally driven stylistic howlers. Like this one I remember written with red ink, sweeping hand strokes. He has put a cap on the Lenin's bust's head. Please look into that. Sergei would have made a great book reviewer. With his literature talent, he was very good at commenting on the teacher sentences' stylistic shortcomings, some of them taking up half of the precious page of her desperate emotions. Not so long ago, we with our wives drank together, and I remembered those diaries. How about to see them and have some fun, I suggested. He immediately pouted. Obviously, it wasn't a good idea for him. He'd no longer kept them, he said. I should have known better than that. He had a grown-up daughter who had adored his father. He was a hero to her and probably was doing good at school too. Sergei and I also like to remember our youth after the army. It was a bit violent, a bit carefree. When we celebrated our birthdays, we couldn't help it to get sad. We didn't want to grow up. Look at Lena, Olga's sister. She had grown and become even prettier than Olga herself. She was gorgeous. At one of the farewell parties, one of our friends was getting drafted. It went just perfect with her. And late at night, we bailed out on them with a group of girls. I walked holding Lena, and she invitingly squeezed my hand. But drunk Tolan was always behind us, an overstout bear who was my sister's classmate once. Long before he had his ass kicked though, and since then he constantly showed me his scar under his lower lip, making fun of that. His class was on duty at the school that week, and Tola told me to take my headgear off. No boys were allowed to wear their shapkas inside the school building. That was the rule. What the fuck? Damn, I had no time to straighten him up. I was late for my class. I went on, but he, the fucking squirt, tried to remove it from my head. Fuck me well! I turned around, jumped up. He was taller than me, and right on the fly I gave him a heavy blow in the jaw. I clocked him good. He immediately went down, and I went to my class. The combined force of my blow was such that I broke a hole on his lower lip so, as he later said, he could easily breathe through it. And he had that scar ever since. And now he brought it up again. It wasn't good. No, not at that moment. I saw that he didn't like that I was hitting on Lena the Beautiful that evening, and in fact he never liked that I and Ruslan showed up in his neighborhood and booped the girls around. I do not remember how exactly the brawling started. It was a bad joke I had made, I think. It was something I replied to him like, "But I'm still better than you." That was our inside joke with Ruslan. Big mistake. I should have never tried it on Tola. He scowled and kept going on me like, "Why the fuck you are better than me? What is so fucking special about you?" I tried to talk some sense back to him. Tried to explain that this was only my joke. I didn't want him to ruin my date. But it was useless. Well, why the fuck not? I had not fought for a while. It was my first real fight after the army. Damn, I was still good. I, being drunk, quickly thrashed this bare big guy. but the girls disappeared immediately. It was okay. I mean, normal girls are always terribly afraid of any fights, of any over-aggressive men. Normally, I'm not overly aggressive either. Sergei tried to stop us, to break up a fight, but he was not big enough to handle us and got bounced off like a chip. Sergei was a great fighter himself, but in the different weight category, especially compared with Tola, the sumo wrestler-looking guy. But I beat him. We would stop and start again. No more talking sense to him. I would beat him again and again. Finally, we stroke our hands. Peace. You've always beaten me up, he said, still feeling hurt. Anyways, we made peace before the locals started gathering up. It was his neighborhood after all. We even had a couple more drinks after that. We had been good friends since then. The bad thing, though, was that he had ruined my date with Lena anyway. I found her. She sat on a bench with some pretty teenage boy, and I felt that it was too late. I no longer was welcomed by her. Damn you, Tola, an asshole, a party pooper. It was also thrilling to think about bragging to Ruslan about dating Olga's younger sister. Olga used to have a crush on Ruslan once, but it was all gone now. It was a really good time. Well, how about students from Leningrad? They feared our local and very aggressive, as they thought, girls. They taught us all their student songs. I still remember one. We went with them to the disco and glanced down at the local girls. Fucking take that. Sorry, but we are not available. Not for you. We are with students from Leningrad, you know. No wonder they were afraid of the locals. To me, they were just friends. I had dated nobody. I was still missing Ellie. Oh. Well, I would never say that my personal life was very much a success. But to Sergei, it all went even worse. He has sacrificed his life for his daughter as well. He suffered and still suffers because of his out-of-the-line and drinking wife whom he never loved. And nothing of his sparkling charisma and the senses of humor I remembered was left on him. What a shame. I asked him if he still wrote poetry. No. How about playing the guitar? No. He didn't remember when it was the last time he took it in his hands. Well, I felt I was looking at Chekhov's Yonich. Whenever we drank at his place, he would turn on his Mikhail Krug, very Russian criminal waltz song singer who got himself assassinated for something, karaoke to sing along. That's how he entertained himself. Then he quit drinking, and when he was 53 years old, his granddaughter was born, and then next year another one. And now he lived for them too. Of course, I'm happy for him, but he did not leave anything personal for himself. Having quit drinking, of course, he hasn't completely dehumanized himself because of it, but he has lost his charisma and liveliness to a great extent. He works as a guard and goes to fitness every day, considers himself very fit and invulnerable, almost a special forces officer. But he looks very good, I'll give that to him. Whenever he met Sveta, our classmate and my former deskmate, and who used to live next door to me, and always an aggressive and good-looking girl, she always admired him. But there was a time when I recognized bully and fighting machine. She almost beat me with arm wrestling. But there was a time when she beat me, the recognized bully and fighting machine, with arm wrestling. Right, in geography class. She was a really strong girl. She and her older sister Galka. We were all afraid of her, and her mother, who was often driving around on her sidecar blue motorcycle loaded with hay for her cows. Of course, she had a head start, because of the decent disc slope on her side, and her hand was way too high over mine, and I immediately felt like I could not beat her. And the whole class was watching us now. The lesson was broken, and no way I could ever lose to her. Can you imagine what would have started? Radik himself lost to Svetka. No one would even listen that the desk was all wrong and the competition wasn't fair. I only desperately hoped that the teacher would interfere and kick me out of the class. It would help me not to lose my face. I was kicked out all right, and an angry entry was made in my school diary, but I escaped my public disgrace. I had already had some lovely dovey gossips about us in class because I lived next door to her. And the neighborhood thought the same because we went to the same class. For this reason, we avoided each other, but we were put on the same desk. Then she worked as a waitress in a restaurant for a very long time after school. It was a high-class profession to be a waitress in the USSR. She was marriageable, so sexy and strong, and always well-dressed. Her older brother was a sailor who sailed abroad and brought her and her sister some nice fashionable dresses, always in short supply in the Soviet Union. Sergey, if you all of a sudden reading this and recognize yourself, please do not be offended. I don't know how to embellish the people. Sergey has always been naive with little resistance to propaganda, even to the Soviet one, which was extremely inefficient for the most in the last Soviet 10 years. Well, I never thought of myself being very smart in the exact science, but I would overcome this with perseverance, and I love science. He is even less smart and certainly has nothing to overcome it with. And with his taste to paternalism and religiosity he had since his childhood, he is, as they say about guys like him, strong-headed, suggesting that he never makes his way in life. It's true. They're not leaders. They're good soldiers. In the summer of 2021, Sergey sent me his certificate of the first place he took in powerlifting in the town of Lermontov, where he, at the age of 56, lifted the 140 kilos of weight from the chest. Bravo, Sergey!